It's the Dream It Alive show. I'm your host, Ash Kumra, co-founder of DreamItAlive.com. DreamItAlive.com is a global community guiding you to create your dream life with visualization tools, dream boards, and personal development content. It's free, and it's your chance to become the best version of yourself. So check out DreamItAlive.com. Today's guest is a dynamic individual. Shara Senderoff has really shown what it takes to transform the job-seeking, dream job, finding your dream business type of mentality. She is actually the co-founder, CEO of Career Sushi, and outside of running this amazing venture, which we'll get into, she has really established herself as a force to be reckoned with. She's been featured by Forbes as a 30 under 30 leader. She's been featured by Fast Company's 100 most creative people in business. She's been featured as one of the top 7 Gen Y employment champions. CEO.com has referenced her. She's just all over the map in a totally good way. And it's a really fascinating story because she came from really awesome, humble beginnings, worked her way up in the Hollywood system, and then is now, among other things, created a awesome platform, Career Sushi. So let's dive into this and let's get inspired by her journey and see what it takes to succeed. So Shara, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. And thank you for that great introduction also.
Oh, you totally deserve it. Shara, tell us about your journey. How did you get to where you are right now?
I think what you said about being all over the map is something that I actually love and feel like for me is a compliment. I think a lot of people would hear all over the map and feel like somebody is unfocused, but for me, that truly defines my journey and how I've been able to sort of piece together a puzzle using a lot of things I love. So my journey, the short version of it, started out moving out to LA to be in the film business. I wanted to make movies, produce television shows, and I started as an assistant about 8 years ago for a big television and film producer, Mark Gordon, who does Grey's Anatomy, Saving Private Ryan, Speed, a ton of stuff, and sort of climbed my way up from there to be a development executive and produce my own stuff. And from that, I sort of led the company in the creation of a digital division. And this was really before anyone had their hand in digital media and new media. And we were sort of just trying new things and really looking at how to monetize content, which, as you can see, we're still really trying to figure that out 8 years later or 6 years later. So from there, Career Sushi, which was previously called Intern Sushi, was a concept I actually came up with in college, and I sort of said to Mark, look, there's still a huge market for reinventing the way interns land internships, and we have a big problem in particular in the film and television industry in that there is no access. If you don't have a relationship with somebody within the business, it's really hard for you to get that first opportunity. And that was something that I was able to get without any help from my parents or any help from anyone I knew. I just put myself out there to companies I wanted to work for in a very visual and dynamic and more personality-filled manner. And that's really what was able to skyrocket me into the business. And so that concept is what we pulled from in order to create Intern Sushi, which was to completely reinvent the process, no longer use a resume, and allow young candidates to apply to opportunities by showcasing their passion and their potential. And so that sort of led me into the startup world, and from there it became a machine that I sort of couldn't really walk away from. But so now we're on a long journey. We then transitioned to Career Sushi to offer full-time jobs. And so I still have all of my relationships in digital and film and TV, and those are really important for me as I grow a tech company in Hollywood to be able to leverage in an organic way strategic partnership opportunities that other startups might not have had the luxury to have.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing that story and being honest with us about how you got there. You're very lucky, and I feel luck is chance being the right opportunity. And you saw early on when you were working for this production company that there's all these opportunities, whether it's building the digital media practice or whether it's pitching Intern Sushi. I want you to give advice for that person who, let's say they're starting out in a job and they know it's just like hey, it's paying the bills, it's getting my feet wet, but I want to now take that next step and build my own dream business or launch a dream initiative within a company, because entrepreneurship is also an internal thing as well. How do you prepare to take that plunge, I guess? That's the question I would like you to answer if possible.
I think what's interesting is I've never been a believer in luck. I believe that the component of chance is more putting us around other people who we can learn from and we can team up with in our journey. But I think that luck is really defined by a fearlessness to work as hard as possible until you reach a goal. And that's really what I look at when I look at what I believe I've done successfully, and when I look at candidates that either I'm looking to hire, or when I speak to people who are either trying to start something from the ground up or applying for an opportunity and going in for an interview, or within an organization and trying to create something new or take a company in a different direction. It's really utilizing everything you have and being really smart about how you put something together. And so a lot of times I see entrepreneurs who have great ideas just dive so deep in before doing the proper research and analysis and really understanding what they're doing. Or I see people which is to me a big mistake, because in order to create something successful, you really have to give it the time and research to figure out the direction you're going, so you can try to prevent as many mistakes as possible, which we all make a million, but the goal is to try to minimize them as much as possible. But also I talk to a lot of people who just think that what they want to do is not possible. And it's what you have to remember, and what I always try to tell people about what I've done with Intern Sushi is people will say to me, oh, your idea for changing the resume is just brilliant. And I'm like, it's not brilliant at all. It's something that so many of us think about on a daily basis, whether we're in the situation of needing a job, whether we're looking at a resume for a candidate we want to work with. We all realize that this is a broken process. It's just I continued to fight it and haven't stopped yet. So that's the difference between people who just have the idea to make a change and then people who do it. I always sort of talk to my friends about life being a marathon, and if you just sprint so hard, you're going to die down and you're not going to be able to run anymore. So it's just about whoever is the last man standing is the one that will win, in my opinion. So I always tell people to just keep working.
I love that. I love that last man standing, because that's such a true statement. And this actually segues into the other thing that I'm really fascinated about with you is that you've built quite a name as an individual, self-branded individual. And what I love about it is that you've been able to parlay a lot of these things back to your businesses. One of the things I wanted to understand is, how do you get your name out there as an entrepreneur? Like, how do you become relevant? Like, how do you get the attention of the Forbeses, the Fast Companies? And I know eventually, as you get successful, they come to you and they say, hey, like, we want to profile you, and it's not as big and you have money for a PR person. But in the beginning stages, there must have been some hustle to get featured by some of this press. Am I right?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is relationship building. Okay. I think a lot of it is finding people that are interested in what you're interested in and showing them what you're doing and why it's different. And so a lot of, like, just like you said, like, at the beginning, you don't really have the access. But even for me, a lot of the attention that my company got, or any time I was profiled individually, it was because someone thought what I was doing was cool. It wasn't because they were like, you know what, we should write about this person or this story because someone told me to. They actually thought that it was a cool idea and it was an interesting story that they wanted to share with their audience. So what I always try to tell young entrepreneurs or anyone at any level is just find the people who are like you and who are interested in you and put content out there. So, I mean, Ash, you're a great example of someone who constantly puts out content. So I built my brand the same way. I'm an influencer on LinkedIn. I write articles all the time. I write for Huffington Post also, and it's one of those things that I never whenever I write an article, I'm really so much writing from my opinion and my heart and what I believe in. And so if you look at the range of articles I've written, some will be like deeply seated in like tactical strategies for startups, and others will be about like how I was going on a walk one day with my sister and talking about like how at every stage of life we're either thriving or surviving. So I'll go very philosophical too. And that has helped me build an audience of all different people who have been able to see all different sides of me. And then when they comment, I pay attention to those comments and I remember people. So I think one of my greatest strengths too when it comes to PR, when it comes to partnerships, because biz dev is really what I love the most. It's just creating a collection of people and remembering where they sit within the puzzle so that when you need something, you remember, okay, that person I talked to a year ago works here, so let me call them and ask advice on this. And then that's how you build a relationship, by finding out how you can help somebody else. And I think when it came to press, I sort of took an angle of, well, how can I help the journalist who was covering it? And truthfully, a lot of times, I went to the interns. So that was one of my secrets, is that when it comes to a lot of the media, their interns are writing stories for them. And you would have no idea that it's an intern that wrote a piece. But when I was going out as intern, Sushi, what better way to get people to cover my company than to go right to the interns?
I love that. Wow. You're really good at finding hidden gems. That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm getting from you. That's so awesome. Well, let's dive into a little bit about your where you see the job world heading. I mean, naturally, with what you've done, you have some insights. Like for 2015, like people that are looking to find that dream job or create that dream business. I mean, what are some thoughts that come to your mind?
I mean, I think that what we're seeing is an influx of people who believe that the process is broken. So there are, of course, apps that are popping up left and right. There are Tinder for jobs types of concepts, and everyone's trying to make the process easier to be able to put yourself out there. But at the end of the day, and it's been this way since content really came to be, is content is king. And I was having a conversation with a company or a startup that I'm advising branding-wise, and I was saying to them, everything that you put out has to be immaculate, because you're only going to get, based on Facebook's algorithm or wherever you place certain pieces of branding about yourself or your company, you're only getting a few impressions or a few chances to get that seen. And people are going to make an impression of you from seeing something visually, because that's where you're going. So that's where we're going. So when it comes to putting yourself out there for the job market, I think it's going to continue to be the people that present themselves incredibly well visually, because that's where we're headed, and making sure that you have a website of yourself. You're taking advantage of every platform that's out there, as far as either job-related platforms or not even job-related platforms. I know that About.me is sort of headed more toward the job space than their original plan of just being a big database of people, but there's no harm in having a presence everywhere, because you never know when somebody who needs you is going to look at some platform, because that's what they're using. So I think it really comes down to making sure that your brand is consistent across the internet. And it's so interesting that I feel like everyone's preaching this, and it sounds so cliche and it sounds so non-specific, but it's really true. It's make sure that even if you have an image of yourself that's up on any website, that it's appropriately named so that it can show up in Google search, and that SEO-wise it can get picked up in the right places. And that seems like 101, yet so many people are not doing it.
That's interesting. That's a really good insight. Who are some of your creative influences? You really are all about creativity. So, I mean, what are some people that current or or gone that inspire you?
For me, it's really interesting. It's all across the board. So, and that's allowed me to like really draw from so many passions. So I have a deep love for the music business and what artists are doing now to be able to stand out. And when it comes to like the film and television world and just filmmakers in general, and how we're directing television now to be much more cinematic, it's interesting that my influences are sort of anyone who is visually making a name for themselves, even if it's a small band that I catch the eye of on Facebook. Something about their designs and what they're visually putting out about themselves always inspires me. So I'm sort of one of those people that draws inspiration from a million things and never from one person, because there's so many elements that you're going to need to draw from at so many places. There's only so many times within our lives that we're actually looking to reinvent the wheel. It's more that we're looking to just take to appropriately complement the people or the things we see that have inspired us.
Okay, cool. Well, I got one last question before we dive into some audience questions. If you could talk to a 5 to 10 year younger version of yourself, the version that's just kind of getting the approval or funding or resources to start at the time intern Sushi, what would you say to that person? Because I'm sure you've significantly grown and learned a lot since then, right?
Absolutely. I would say it's not going to go well. So if you know that you're going to hit obstacles, but at the end of the day, the experience is something that is so invaluable, and to cherish the things that don't go well, then I'll end up being much stronger in the end. And I've really felt that over the last year, and I've sort of struggled and gone back and forth around trying to embrace the challenges and know that they're making me so much better. But that's a really hard thing to really see within the moment. But it's really important to just know that it's not always going to be an easy road, and that especially when you're an entrepreneur or you're the CEO or a founder of a company, it is very hard. So I think a lot of these young minds, which are great, and I hope that they continue to take big risks, they should just know that it's a bumpy road. But in the end, as long as you sort of find what's good about that, you'll learn a lot.
Awesome. Well, we got some awesome audience questions here, so I'm going to dive right into it. Teresa has a question for you, and her question is, Shara, walk me through how the best way is to raise money. I have a technology site, I have traction, I've shown some revenues. How was your journey raising money?
I raised money privately for the majority of my company with sort of angels and private tech investors, and I went through relationships. So I sort of looked at people that I knew were interested in this space that I was focusing on, that were interested in the demographic that I was reaching. And so I think when it comes to raising money, you can send your stuff out to 1,000 people, but it won't do you any good if half of those people are not interested in putting money into your market. So a lot of times when I was going through the VC process, a lot of VCs said, I'm just so not interested in the job space. So knowing that you can figure out what people are interested in, it's go reach out to the people that are interested in investing in what you're doing and find introductions to them, because cold emails don't work. So use your network and find a way to have someone introduce you to the people who could be right for what you're doing.
Okay, totally get that. I mean, find the people that get what you're doing. Focus on the people that matter. It's funny. I always watch this. This happens on Shark Tank all the time. Like everyone, Mark Cuban's Mr. Rockstar, and a lot of people will pitch. And Mark, I like about him is that he tells you pretty early on if he's not interested. He'll be like, I'm out. And then the guy or girl will still try to pitch to Mark, and he's like, dude, I'm out. And while they're trying to pitch to him, like Bob Herjavec or Mr. Wonderful or whoever will be like, hey, Mark is out, we're still in. So I don't know why you're focusing on Mark. It's just funny. Like what you're saying is analogous.
It's like make the job easier for yourself by knowing the people that are ahead for you.
Yeah. Well, Susan has a question, and her question is hey, Shara, really love what you're doing with Career Sushi. What are your thoughts on all this press and media on women entrepreneurship? Do you have any comments on it?
I think that when it comes to the topic of women entrepreneurs and any controversy or anything, I think what I always say is don't create a battle for yourself that's not there. So I've never found being a woman to be a challenge for me. And when I found it to be, I simply think about the things that are making me fearful or hesitant to make a decision because I'm a woman, and I go with whatever I wouldn't do if that weren't the case. So I think I'm a huge supporter of women entrepreneurs. I try to advise them and work with anyone that reaches out to me who is a woman trying to start a company, because there are challenges. For me, I've tried to battle them as much as possible, but I'm obviously, with women entrepreneurship in general, a huge supporter.
Okay.
We have to get more women out there.
Nice. Well, final question, and this is from Joseph, and he wanted to know, why did you make the transition from intern sushi to career sushi? And, that's the question.
Larger market. So, I mean, that's a big lesson for entrepreneurs in general, is make sure you have a large enough market to be able to scale your business based on your goals. So the intern market, we saw challenges. We always knew we were going to career sushi, so it was just the natural next step. But we also knew that we could start small, we could build a brand, we could build our presence, and then we could grow bigger to really be able to hit a much larger audience.
Okay, cool. Well, my last question for you before we end this is, what's next for you?
Well, that's a wonderfully big question. I think I'll always start companies over and over and over again. I'm the definition of a serial entrepreneur, so I'm always doing a million things. So I'll continue to grow this, and when the time comes to do something else, then I'll probably do another company.
Okay, well, specifically for Career Sushi then, like what are some cool things for 2015 publicly that you could share?
We're dabbling in some international ventures, so that will be sort of the next reveal for us in the next coming months, is expanding globally in a really cool way. Nice.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, and keep making the world awesome. I love what you're doing, and you're like you're such a hustler. Like, you're always doing something bigger and better, and keep it up.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.